as we move into this AI age is that if we start letting AI do the work for us without using AI as a tool, that's where quality has the potential to start slipping. And I think that that will impact learner engagement, learner uptake. One of the keys to unlock learning validity is it relevant?
Yes.
The people in location A aren't going to learn as much if you're teaching them about something happening at location B. Make it relevant for them so they can apply the concepts that you're talking about. Those of us who work in learning and development, we know how valuable we are.
Sure.
We know how crucial we are to the success of the business. But if we can't show it, if we can't prove it, then we're oftentimes viewed as a nice to have, not a need to have. On my team, I have 3 very experienced instructional designers. And as these AI functionalities have started cropping up, I've encouraged all of them to stay up to date. We kind of have a common belief that AI isn't going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI could.
Hi, welcome to another episode of The Future of Learning, where we explore how organizations are navigating the tension between technological acceleration and human capability development. If you've been following this series, you know we've talked about AI as a strategic tool, about the gap between compliance metrics and actual capability building, and about moving L&D from cost center to strategic partner. But today's conversation takes us into territory that often gets glossed over in L&D thought leadership. What happens when learning has to work for frontline manufacturing employees in one country and corporate office workers in another one? Not just translated, but fundamentally redesigned. My guest today is Michael Conover, who leads learning and development at International Motors. But here's what makes Michael's perspective particularly valuable. He's not theorizing about equitable learning design or AI implementation. He's building bottom-up learning models for a 14,000-person workforce whilst working with enterprise systems that weren't designed for effective learning. I'll let Michael explain that more in detail. He's hired Mexico-based facilitators specifically to culturally modify US programming rather than assuming American examples work everywhere. And he's navigating tariff-driven budget constraints whilst being told to do more with less, something I'm sure that many of our audience will also hear a lot, except he's actually figured out how to do it. We'll find out how. Now, this is someone living the complexity that most L&D case studies conveniently edit out. Michael comes from a teaching background, elementary education, then higher education before transitioning into corporate L&D. Now, that classroom experience gave him something many corporate L&D leaders lack, an understanding of why learning fails to stick and what human behavior under time pressure actually looks like. So his team has grown exponentially over the last few years, which tells you something about the hunger for development in the organization and the strategic value leadership sees in properly resourced learning and development. So today we're diving into questions like, how do you design learning for people who will abandon if it takes more than 2 clicks? What does cultural modification actually mean beyond just translating content? Where is AI genuinely amplifying capability versus just creating more outputs? And what happens when the enterprise system you're forced to use actively works against effective learning? Michael, welcome to the Future of Learning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's get straight in. Okay, so you've built both top-down leadership programs and bottom-up enrollment opportunities. Would that be fair?
Yes. Enrollment and nomination.
Okay. So most organizations focus their development budgets on, not always, but high potential talent and leadership pipelines. Yeah. So the lead programs that look impressive in annual reports. And that's not fair for every organization, granted, but it is something that we see a lot. Now, you've taken a very different approach. You focused significant resources on making learning accessible to everyone, not just those identified as potential future leaders. So What's driving that strategic choice, and how does designing for frontline employees fundamentally change what you build compared to what traditional leadership development programs look like?
Well, I've had the opportunity to work in learning and development for a number of different companies now, all manufacturing companies. And what I found was that so often those learning and development opportunities were focused on the employees at the corporate office. It could be because of efficiency, cost savings, or it could be because the employees in manufacturing locations, distribution warehouses, other office locations, they just weren't as visible. So, as we were building the learning and development group here at International, one of our key tenets was making sure that International University is for all of International, not just those located in the corporate headquarters, but for everyone. So to do that, we took a number of different approaches. One, we worked to make sure that our on-demand content, the content that we would purchase from various providers, was available to everyone. Making sure that licensing was available to as many people as possible. When it comes to developing learning, if we're creating our own digital learnings, one of the expectations that I would have for my instructional designers was that we had it available in English, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
also French Canadian, as well as Mexican Spanish. And these weren't going to be separate SCORM files, so you had to go search for your language. It was all packaged within the same e-learning file, so that way when you open the link, it was kind of a select your path based on your preferred language. When it comes to our facilitated programs, that was a little bit more tricky. When we
Okay.
started out, we had a smaller team. We were pretty small, pretty scrappy. The first program that we launched was a change leadership program, so leading yourself and others through change. Uh, Originally designed to be for leaders, this turned out to be a course that was popular whether you're a people leader or an independent contributor, um, supporting our belief in or our value of having a leader in every seat. So, whether you're leading others or leading yourself through change, this was a really applicable course. We had a number of different cohorts here in the US, both face to face as well as virtual led. And then through connecting with our colleagues in Mexico, we had the opportunity to take this program to a number of our sites in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I only had English speaking facilitators on my
Mm-hmm.
team. And I think that we were able to get in front of most of our bilingual colleagues in Mexico, but there was still a large population that were not bilingual. So that's where about a year ago, we were able to bring on a Mexico based facilitator onto my team who's been able to take not just the change leadership program, but several of our other leadership development programs to Mexico, across Mexico, and be able to speak to them in their native language using native phrases as well as more relatable scenarios.
So how much of a, I mean, it depends, I suppose, on your resource library and how many materials you're looking to sort of expose your workforce to. But in that particular example, like you've got, thousands of employees in different countries and in many cases speaking different languages. So how much of a editing procedure did you have to go through in order to be able to facilitate so that everybody understood the content you were trying to get across?
To be honest, that was a journey. Started small. when we were facilitating in Mexico in English, we did try to translate some of the materials, such as there was a case study involved with our change leadership program. So we started by translating the case study and encouraging, when they would be in breakout groups, encouraging them to discuss in Spanish so they could have a much more rich discussion without having to worry about needing to pull English speaking skills into the mix. Then we started more intentionally creating materials in multiple languages. And right now, that same program is, we've been running that program now for almost 4 years, the change program. And that program is currently going through kind of a routine update, refurbishment. And part of the output of that is going to be the program fully translated into Mexican Spanish. So that way we can fully extend that program. Another one of my colleagues within the university, she and her team manage organizational development, change management, leadership development. They have a couple of tiered or stratified programs to address the leaders in every seat opportunity. So aspiring leaders, new leaders, and then leaders of leaders. The emerging leader program that we have, that's one program that we were able to launch in Mexico last year, fully translated, fully in Spanish, and then facilitated by our Mexico-based facilitators. Again, highlighting the benefit of not having to worry about bilingual limitations or worrying about trying to translate English to Spanish or vice versa, live and in the flow of work. So it's been a learning and growing experience for our team as well. But tying this back to our international values that we have, being able to support a leader in every seat and then offering learning and growth and development opportunities to everyone is really helping to fulfill that mission.
So, uh, obviously, I totally appreciate the value-driven element here. Now, I'm not saying this is the case everywhere, but did you find any issues with, because the term leader sort of has a kind of element to it which might make some people go, well, that's not for me, because they might be doing a role where they just think that's not going to resonate with me because I'm not a leader, so they
Sure.
automatically just push back because they don't believe they belong in that sphere. So have you had to overcome any elements around that to ensure that more people were exposed to these kind of programs?
A lot of that is, the answer is yes. A lot of that is changing the way that we talk, kind of from a top-down perspective. I think there's very few jobs out there these days where you are an independent worker and have little to no interaction with others. I think that, we are still in a day and age when someone says leader, people leader, I have to have a team to be considered a leader. But I think back over the course of my career and before I was a formal people leader, the number of leadership opportunities that I maybe didn't recognize, whether I was leading an agency or vendor, directing that work, leading a project with fellow colleagues, or even just leading different initiatives within a team that I was a part of. When you start to change the way you talk about leadership, I think that it starts to make a big difference. And it's not just being a formal people leader. You have that opportunity to lead and direct work, projects, initiatives, colleagues, vendors, regardless of what level you're at in the organization and whether or not you're a people leader or an independent contributor. similarly, my colleague who is the leader over the organizational development, leadership development team within the university, we're currently working on launching leadership behaviors. So as we tie things back to our international values, our international way, you have leadership behaviors and then associated skills that go with that. And that's one way that we're deploying that concept of leader in every seat, whether you're leading yourself, leading others, or leading teams.
Okay. So with, I mean, you obviously started out on this journey where you found that the courses being offered were primarily directed in one direction, and that there was obviously the majority of people in, as you say, in Mexico weren't being exposed to these courses, and you wanted to make, something for everybody. So have you managed right now to expose every single person to learning development that's being created, or are you still facing some battles along the way?
We're still working on it. And I think that for those of us in learning and development, I think that that's going to be an ongoing, um, I'll call it a mission,
Mm.
not a challenge, because I think that it really takes a mission like determination to keep pushing forward with that. We have made some terrific progress, and there's some different ways that or different considerations that you need to take. With me, my experience being with manufacturing companies, I have found that meeting people where they're at, which that's a phrase we throw around a lot
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
business, but I mean that physically, going to some of these locations to bring these learning and development opportunities to the masses. A couple of years ago, we had an HRIS migration, um, and with the experience that I've had with ERP projects before, um, digital learning is only so engaging when
Uh-huh.
you're talking about training on systems.
Uh-huh.
And from a previous role where we were doing an ERP training, being able to be face to face, one, it's a change management tactic. You're able to visually observe all of the learners in your classroom rather than relying on cameras that are usually turned off on your screen. You're able
Uh-huh.
to see who is engaged. You're able to see who's getting frustrated or nervous. But there's also that human element. So often, the people who work in the corporate offices don't have the opportunity to make it into the manufacturing facilities, to engage with the people who work there. And what
Yeah.
I have found really at all of the manufacturing companies I've worked at, when someone from corporate shows up in the manufacturing facilities, the people receiving that person, it shows them that you care, that you're invested enough in in this case, in their learning and development, in their engagement. You care enough to show up, and they come to class completely differently. They come ready to be engaged, ready to learn. And if they come to class like that, they go back to the floor, back to their jobs, their roles, ready to apply what you've brought to them.
How has that affected your model of delivery then? Like, did you have a particular vision in mind originally and then saw the impact of certain things and went, right, well, we're gonna have to modify elements of this based on, that kind of feedback?
For me, I don't know that it's necessarily modified the way I do anything, but it has strengthened my conviction and my resolve in the importance of showing up, the importance of meeting people where they're at. Digital learning for some programs it works great, and it meets the needs of the business. It's more cost effective, but sometimes you need that face to face
Hmm.
touch. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something that earlier in my career, I think of we were migrating to Microsoft. It was a Microsoft implementation, and I timidly suggested it was a global company, and I timidly suggested that um, we go to Europe to train, that we go to Asia to train and support the implementation. Um, I was told no, job aids will do the job. And like I said, I was young and timid back then, and I accepted that answer. And then the adoption rates started to
Mm.
roll in,
Uh-huh.
where we were seeing 70 to 80% adoption here in the US. We were seeing 15 to 20% adoption with our colleagues in Europe and in Asia.
Why do you think that was?
As a learning and development professional, I'd like to believe that, it was largely due to not having a great training experience. While I do believe that's part of it, I think that change management um, may not have taken into consideration some of the cultural impacts, cultural changes that go with that. But what I took away from that was I need to fight for what I know is going to work. I need to fight for what I know is right. Um, and as we here at International, when we had that HRIS implementation, coming to the table to sell, we need to go to our 4 manufacturing locations. We need to go to Mexico and support our colleagues who are managing the migration in Mexico. Um, it made a significant difference in engagement as well as our adoption rates.
Okay, very good. So we're going to go back a little bit to to maybe look at some examples, if you don't mind. I think, was it fair that I think there's about 40% of the workforce in Mexico? Is that fair? I might be
Roughly,
roughly, okay. So you've been deliberate, quite rightly, around cultural modification. You've kind of explained, how you went about that, and obviously recruiting people within the spaces to sort of, look at how you can make things uh, more natural to the people who are obviously taking in that information, rather than just making it, this American English, if you like, or based on the cultural elements of America. So,
right.
just talk us a little bit more in terms of the cultural context. Like, what did that look like in practice? What were the most when you're designing for different cultures? Because a lot of organizations probably think localization just means translation. So and which is clearly not the case. There's a lot more to it than that. So, or maybe changing a few pictures. We'll take out the picture of the American flag and we'll put the Mexican one in, or whatever. But you know
Right.
what I mean? It's like, so give us some practical examples of how you were able to, what really made a difference, do you think, in terms of uptake, in terms of that cultural context, and how you made things more natural for the people who were taking in that information in the Mexico-based area?
Think that I think that learners typically know when we've been lazy. If, to your point, we're just translating or just swapping out a few images. Um, because we don't necessarily know the cultural differences. Sometimes it's colloquialisms or the phrases or words that we use, um, scenarios that we use. If we simply translate, using whichever translation tool you use, if you just translate without having any local verification or any localized input, your learners know that it's lazy.
Mm.
Um, and we ran into that the first time we translated that case study. Um, we watched people read through it. We had it printed out, and we watched them read through it. You start seeing people, kind of, And then they start to ask questions. Well, what does this mean? And then we get into a sticky spot. So having a local partner, not just verify your translation accuracy, because AI, AI and the translation tools that we all have available to us for little to no cost, while mostly effective, they're not going to root out any American phrasing, colloquialisms,
Sure.
or scenarios. So
Yeah.
having a local partner who knows the culture and can catch those things has been really instrumental. Something else that we were doing when we would go and facilitate in English was we spent a lot of time listening. One, we learned a lot about our own business in Mexico or in LATAM in general. But taking the opportunity to listen is going to give you, as the facilitator, give you the opportunity to kind of hear what's troubling them, hear what their everyday looks like, and then you can modify on on the spot, a discussion topic or an output or an activity. By being intentional and doing those things before with a local expert helps you catch those things and save some class time, which allows for more robust discussion.
Yeah.
Before we continue, a quick thank you from our sponsor, OpenElm's Learning Generator. With just a text prompt or document, AI instantly builds a full professional course, complete with video presenters, quizzes, animations, and voiceovers in any language. You can edit everything online and export it as e-learning, a PowerPoint or video. You can even export it as a podcast or video game experience. The best part, you can try it free for 14 days and see how you can use this special agentic AI system to transform your training at openelms.ai. Back to the show.
I totally understand, having a cultural partner on the ground, someone who's local to the population you're trying to develop, and look at the materials, look at the elements that are there. It's not just simply translation. As you say, AI can translate for you now. It's not difficult, but it doesn't necessarily, it won't pick up on, as you say, maybe localizations. And also, there will be elements that a local partner can bring to that and go, actually, if you actually phrase it like this, it's going to have more impact. And so making it just something, it is about impact, isn't it? It's about making sure that the learning sticks. And so if they can tell. Yeah.
Well, it's not even always about kind of cultural localization. It's if we're talking manufacturing, a challenge that we're facing at a manufacturing facility here in the US may not be something that they're experiencing at their manufacturing facility in Mexico. They may have a completely different challenge that they are working through, whether it's a hands-on process related issue or a workplace culture leadership issue. By having someone who's closer to the learners take a look at that, they can help modify and ensure that the content isn't just understandable, but that it's relevant.
Yeah.
And that's where I think one of the keys to unlock learning validity is it relevant?
Yes.
The people in location A aren't going to learn as much if you're teaching them about something happening at location B. Make it relevant for them so they can apply the concepts that you're talking about.
Absolutely. So we're going to lean a little into the maybe more of the digital side for a moment, if you don't mind. So, because you've mentioned, you've not mentioned directly in this conversation, but I know that a critical design principle that you follow is finding information that takes more than 2 clicks. People abandon it, which design our products as well around that kind of principle as well. It's like if you're in there and you're like click, 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 you're already like lost. So it's got to be like click, click, am I engaged? So as best as you can. So that's not about potentially technology limitations. It's about understanding human behavior, right? Especially when it's time bound, right? So especially also in a manufacturing environment where people don't have unlimited time to hunt for resources, right? So how does that principle shape everything you and your team designs? And more interesting, I suppose, is when you're working with, let's say, the mandatory enterprise platforms that you've said weren't built with, potentially for the elements you're looking for. Not ours, I should say, you're using something else. How do you work around it?
I mean, variety is key. The tricky thing today is our instructional designers have so many different tools available to them. So one thing that we've done is we've built out International University is we have taken a look at key development tools, platforms, and outputs as we have created our instructional designer toolbox. We have, our primary authoring platform, which has different outputs, layouts, and styles. That's one way to differentiate between, segments of learning. But then we also have been incorporating an AI video tool in as well. So this allows us to create custom avatars. So we don't need to be heading into the video studio every week to reshoot something. The technology that we have, you change the script and the avatar changes their whole behavior, what they're saying, how they say it, and how they present. This allows us to not just have a point and click or not just have a sit and listen. It allows us to create some diversity within a digital learning module. So you may read one page, you may engage with an activity on another page, and then have a custom video on a third page. And changing that up and bringing some variety has really proved to be successful. And this was the methodology that we used for the two programs or the two learning initiatives that we took to Brandon Hall, and were successful in bringing home 2 Brandon Hall awards with that approach.
Great, very, very good. So, I suppose at this point it's a nice place to sort of touch on, AI as amplification, not replacement. I think is where we'll probably head with this. So, because you're actively using, AI powered tools, I think that's fair, right? So, and I believe you've been very deliberate about framing this internally, that it's about developing existing headcount to use the tools effectively, not reducing staff, right?
Yes.
So in a manufacturing environment, which is facing tariff pressures, budget constraints, that's a very deliberate strategic choice, when the easy answer would be, and what a lot of people might be facing is, AI means we need fewer people. Now, I don't agree with that statement, but it's something that I think has kind of rippled to certain extents across the world. Now, how are you making that case internally? Okay, and what you're actually seeing in terms of quality and capability?
On my team, I have 3 very experienced instructional designers who have been in the business for quite some time. And as these AI functionalities have started cropping up, I've encouraged all of them to stay up to date. We kind of have a common belief that AI isn't going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI could. And all of my instructional designers have been very proactive in researching what's available, researching functionality. And it used to be with the various development tools that they would have. They might have a software update, a software release once a year. then it became quarterly. Now it's almost every other week. The functionality and the capabilities of these tools keeps changing that quickly. And I've encouraged my my team to stay on top of that. And it was phenomenally rewarding last year as the leader to watch my instructional design team lean into that.
Mm.
Um, to tackle it with an ambition of, I'm going to master the tool isn't going to master me. And the capabilities and the functionalities that are rolling out and how the team is adopting that into their flow has been terrific to watch.
Great. And have you noticed the obviously the content that's been generated? Have you noticed or had feedback from people in the business around the quality of those outputs? Have you seen any difference in uptake of the materials?
I don't know that we've seen a difference in the uptake of the material, but what I have seen is that our quality has remained consistent. The team hasn't gotten lazy. They've stayed diligent. And I think that that's one thing that as we move into this AI age, is that if we start letting AI do the work for us without using AI as a tool, that's where quality has the potential to start slipping. And I think that that will impact learner engagement, learner uptake. Um, so my team's been using AI as a tool, as an enabling function. Um, I mean, by the time we release this, this phrase might even be outdated by then. It changes so quickly. But the newest functionality is being able to upload a PowerPoint or upload a PDF, and the tools will build out a shell for you.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, we've been doing that for a long time. I think, it is a game changer. Um,
right.
Definitely a game changer. And obviously, the beauty of it, I suppose, is that you can constrain the output to just what the materials that you put in, right? So it's like, don't, because AI obviously you has the potential to just go, oh, well, I'm going to go and create lots of stuff around this subject. Like, no, just concentrate solely on the source.
Stay
Which,
focused.
yeah, stay very focused, which is very powerful for companies because they're like, look, we're controlling the knowledge and we're cutting efficiencies, but not necessarily reducing the quality. As you say, that's using people with the tool, not letting the tool do it itself, and that's very, very important. A philosophy actually we 100% share. It's fundamentally important for the future of the human race that it's about a partnership, not a
Yes,
handing over the keys. But so you're in a manufacturing environment, and the tariffs, I believe, and I'm not from manufacturing, as you appreciate, but the tariffs are having, I think, real impacts. I would assume on budgets across the whole industry,
absolutely.
which obviously directly flows to what L&D can resource, because sometimes, not always, but L&D historically can always be the first casualty when budgets are being looked at and they're looking at what can and can't be done. So, I suppose, is this looking at this at the moment as how you can do more with less is a question I think that most L&D leaders will have heard forever. But it's very, very
Ye-
real for you right now, right? So let's explore that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you mentioned, if when you work in learning and development, your budgets are often one of the first ones impacted, and your absence is always or oftentimes felt pretty quickly as well. So I think that, do more with less is a mantra that many of us who work in the industry are used to working within. But in times where the economy gets tricky, budgets tighten up even more, that becomes even more important. And that's where I think that tools, including AI, can help us still deliver a lot of work, even if our time, our headcount, our budgets are impacted. So, and I think that kind of connects back to the previous topic we were chatting about, was making sure you stay on top of the recent developments is going to help you keep up with demand and keep up with the tools and resources, the valuable tools and resources that we have at our fingertips.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think's not working? I think, are there things around the processes that you've put in place at the moment that you think need to be looked at? And, are there things that you are struggling with that you think that are quite common across the L&D space?
Interesting. I just saw a report from Gartner this week talking about the likelihood of changes in L&D operations, and the number of organizations or L&D organizations that are reporting that they're moving to a more centralized model is pushing 70%, that it's either going to happen or likely to happen. So instead of having these pockets of learning and development scattered across the organization, I think that's one thing that we're finding isn't working from a budget perspective, from an efficiency perspective, but also kind of a cohesive approach perspective. I've been in places where there may be 4, 5, 6, 8, 9 different LMS platforms being used within the same organization. So centralization doesn't always mean anyone who touches training is going to report into one team. And one model that we are working to develop here at International is we have the centralized university, and then we have academies throughout the organization. And we're really intentional about staying connected to those different academies. And I think that it makes sense for those academies to sit within their respective business units. A lot of the things that we've already talked about on this call, knowing the business, knowing the people, knowing the way those particular departments talk, function, their challenges, their recent wins. So leaving these academies within the business units maintains that. But that strong connection to the centralized hub is going to be what I think helps us all stay connected, share learnings from each other, kind of grow and move in the same direction. And then there's the opportunities of, instead of maintaining these different LMS platforms, when we start to consolidate, that's where you start to see the cost efficiencies, operational efficiencies. But depending on who the audience is, you may be cutting the number of touch points for your clients down from 2, 3, 4 touch points into a single door to walk through to open up all the learning.
Yeah, that's definitely going to make an impact. We see ourselves when a user can click one button and it takes them through to wherever they need to get to, and it's like, okay, go
and not
here.
have to guess which button to click to get there.
Well, it comes back again a little bit to that 2-click rule, right? It's like where everyone lives. Like you're just losing people in that process. And it's easy to get lost in some of these systems. Let's be honest. Not ours, obviously, but I've seen it happen. So what are we measuring? What actually matters? Now we've had a lot of conversations throughout this series with a whole host of different people, and it does come back to sometimes like certainly in the L&D space, like measurement and impact and what actually does matter. So right now, what actually matters to you, and how are you measuring that in a real way that can be communicated to your fellow senior leaders, etc., etc.
This is a tricky one for us because I think it's still something that we're working on. Working within International University, we sit within the People and Culture Organization or Human Resources, so we're able to see clicks, we're able to see completions. Um, we have a smiley sheet or a level one assessment. But what we're really working towards right now is climbing that Kirkpatrick ladder.
Mm-hmm.
How can we start to measure, did we move the needle? Now, one training that we supported last year was a sales methodology training, moving from selling products to selling solutions.
Mm-hmm.
It was an internal faced training. We partnered with a vendor for about half of the content, but what we started to put in place was more of a level 2 survey. So we'd have a pre and a post survey. How confident do you feel on these topics or these objectives before the training and after the training?
Mm-hmm.
So it was great to be able to report out that we did see positive movement from the pre-survey to the post-survey. But where we're really wanting to push into is, how do we know that that survey was self-reported? What would your people leader say? Was your level of improvement? What would your peers say? What would your direct reports say? So I think that's the next step for us, and then getting into ROI, that top tier. I think that's a little bit more tricky when it comes to more of the leadership development, the soft skills topics.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with sales training, you can tie KPIs to business performance, but in HR, that's a little bit more tricky to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have a good answer other than we're on that journey with many others in the industry.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a movement around. I suppose there has to be, with the way the world is now and the way, and it comes again down to the L&D function always being kind of in the line of fire when you're looking at budgets and things like that. It's like, what's imperative and what's kind of like nice to haves. I suppose it's down now to a lot of L&D functions to prove their worth to a certain extent by demonstrating ROI with really clear data which shows the impact of what they're doing, the impact of the training, and how that's measurable across multiple sites or whatever it might be. And I think those functions that don't have those elements to them, don't have those bullets in their guns, for want of a better, but if you don't have that information, then you're going to struggle, because the senior leadership team, whatever, are always going to look at these things and go, well, what can you prove to us to show that this is working?
That is, yeah, I think that's been a struggle to the industry for a long time. Those of us who work in learning and development, we know how valuable we are.
Sure.
We know how crucial we are to the success of the business. But if we
Yeah.
can't show it, if we can't prove it, then we're oftentimes viewed as a nice to have, not a need to have.
Yes. We're coming towards the end of our time now, and we always ask one particular question pretty much to everybody we talk with, and that's really like, if there's one element that you want people to sort of take away or appreciate from today's conversation, what would it be like?
It's a great question. If I wanted somebody to take something away, it would be the reassurance that we're all learning, we're all figuring it out. Um, it's not possible for everyone to know everything. And there's a lot of topics out in the L&D world right now. AI, skills, platforms, tools, talent development. Um, we're all at various stages of figuring it out. Of course, there's things that um, I'm proud of some of the accomplishments that we've had and some of the progress that we've made, but we're all on a learning journey together. Our tools, AI, everything evolves so quickly. So I would encourage other people in the business, the same as I encourage my team. That's stick with it. Um, Keep running the race and reach out, connect to other people in the industry, see what they're doing, see what angle they're taking, and it. I guess if they don't point you in the right direction, you might find and make a good friend to walk that same journey together.
Lovely stuff. And if in doubt, tune into the Future of Learning because we can help too. So,
Right.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Mike. Really interesting conversation, and it's good, good to unpack some of the elements that you've been going through and the sort of journey you've been plotting forward. So, thanks so much for your time today, and hopefully we'll speak with you again soon.
Thank you.